Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir G. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. If it's coming in to the CBS News Broadcast Center from all of our stations and affiliates, it's coming to you live right here. This is CBS News 24/7. Hurricane Ernesto is strengthening after lashing into Puerto Rico, leaving behind widespread damage and residents in the dark. Where it's heading next. President Biden and Vice President Harris joined forces today to unveil a plan to lower prescription drug prices. We've got the details on the major deal the administration struck with drug makers. And fans in London are shaking it off, right? Shaking it off. That's the song, Taylor Swift. And they're getting ready for T Swift's Eras Tour to resume tonight after a terror plot halted the tour in Vienna. But security is ramping up and the fan experience is changing. We'll tell you all about it. But we begin this morning with Hurricane Ernesto, which brought heavy rain and flooding to Puerto Rico. Nearly 2/3 of the island woke up in the dark after power was knocked out by strong winds. The storm now turns north towards Bermuda. The National Hurricane Center says it is showing no signs of weakening and could actually grow stronger by the time it reaches the island this weekend. CBS News correspondent Dave Malikoff is joining me right now from Bermuda, where he is riding out the storm. Dave, how are residents and officials there preparing for the storm to make landfall?
Good morning, Vlad. Good morning, everybody. They are preparing by taking down what they can take down that may blow around in what could be a big hurricane that comes either over the island or just to the eastern part of the island. This is what's happening at a big sushi restaurant right here. They are taking off the outdoor seating area that could become a sail in all of this wind that may come through here. That's only one of the threats. They are keeping up this big structure here, Vlad, but at some point, some things are going to be blowing around that they don't want to be blowing around, so they're trying to mitigate all of that for right now.
And Dave, as you know, there was extensive flooding in Puerto Rico. How much rainfall are we talking for Bermuda?
Well, it depends on how long it sticks around over here. It was going about 16 miles an hour as it came over Puerto Rico. But as it comes to Bermuda, there's a lot of warm water between there and here, and that's a reason for it to strengthen. So if it stays over us, it's going to dump a lot of water on top of us. But there's also a possibility of 2 feet of storm surge here. And right behind me is Hamilton Bay. So a lot of people are trying to make sure that their boats are secure for that. We also heard from Bermuda's Minister of National Security, Michael Weeks, who gave this warning yesterday.
Let me be clear. While Bermuda has been fortunate in recent years to avoid the worst impacts of hurricanes, we have to take each storm seriously and prepare accordingly. As I've said before, it only takes one storm to cause significant damage and disrupt our way of life.
That is absolutely true. And as he was speaking, it's just started to rain here. This is not one of the outer bands. We are expecting those to start coming in just about 24 hours. That's how far we are away from the first tropical storm force winds here in Bermuda. I'm Dave Malikoff, CBS News in Hamilton, Bermuda.
All right, Dave, thanks very much. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with the latest storm track. Tammy, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Vlad. You know what? This storm already takes up a lot of real estate. Take a look at this. I'm going to show you here in the northern hemisphere how much this affects. You can see the storm. It's right here down to the south, making its way out of Puerto Rico and making its way toward Bermuda. Now, this is going to be something that's going to be a bit of a problem because it's still going to strengthen. So with all of that strengthening, we're going to be concerned about not only the wind, but the amount of rain and the surge that's going to come with it. Currently, this is a Category 1 storm. We are looking at it moving off to the north and the northeast at this point. North-northwest turning to the northeast is what it's going to do. Let's take a look at the track that we're going to be dealing with all of this. Now, the arrow, that points to Bermuda. Here it is. Here is the storm. Here is the track that is expected. Now, this is expected to strengthen to a Category 3 storm. That's a major storm. Early in the season, the second one this season that would have done that. Typically, we don't see this type of thing for another month or so. It may actually weaken a bit before going to Bermuda, but look at this. Right in the middle of this cone, that is where Bermuda is. The problem is it's on the dirty side of this hurricane. So if this is the track and it stays on track like this, that means that the highest winds, the biggest surge, and the heaviest rain will be lashing Bermuda by the time that we get in to Saturday afternoon. After that, it takes off quickly, heads into the North Atlantic, but we have to worry about some of the effects here on the mainland, and that is going to be the high surf and the rip currents. Now, we are going to be looking at these hurricane warnings around Bermuda and this high surf that's going to be headed up the East Coast. If you got plans this weekend to go to the beach anywhere along the eastern seaboard, maybe think twice. Not only will you see the high surf, but you're going to have rain. We'll talk more about all of that when I come back in a few minutes. Vlad?
All right, Tammy, thank you very much. All right, talks aimed at securing a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas are now underway in Doha. This comes the same day the Hamas-run health ministry says the death toll has surpassed 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza. Our Ramy Inocencio is joining us now from Tel Aviv. So, Ramy, a couple of things. What more can you tell us about these ongoing negotiations, first of all? And secondly, is a breakthrough likely?
Hi, Vlad. Yeah, good to see you. A breakthrough is not likely. If that were, that would be a surprise to many. But I have to say that even though Hamas is not in the room, that doesn't mean that progress is not possible. It's just that the room for that has gotten smaller. And just to reconfirm, though, another Hamas official just in the past couple hours did tell CBS News it still is not sending anyone, not planning to, quote, no one from our side in the negotiations. As for what Hamas wants, it continues to look back on a proposal from July 2nd, saying that the government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has not replied to that and has changed the conditions, and that the government here has been trying to carry on the war in Gaza and expand the war into the Middle East. But what we understand is that the Israeli delegation has been empowered by Netanyahu to have some what they call significant leeway there. And as for the people in the room, the talks have started. As for the people in the room, the governments represented, the United States, Israel, Qatar, and Egypt. Qatar and Egypt, of course, being the mediating countries. The people, U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East, Brett McGurk, the U.S. Spy Chief, Bill Burns, Israel's Spy Chief, David Barnea, as well as Egypt's Spy Chief and Qatar's Prime Minister. And then whenever talks end, we don't know when they'll end, Egypt and Qatar, those mediators, will then go to Hamas representatives in Doha and tell them everything that happened.
All right, so that's the discussions that are ongoing, Ramy. But let me ask about the death toll. As you know, the Hamas-run health ministry now says the death toll in Gaza has surpassed 40,000. I've seen the reporting from you and others in the region of those two little babies who were recently killed. The people in Gaza say that was a result of an Israeli airstrike. You can feel how you feel about October 7th, which was a horrific day in the annals of Israeli history, but also feel for these young children who are being killed on a regular basis. What can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. Yes, in that piece that we did on Evening News last night, Mohammed Abul Kamasan and the death of his two twin 4-year-old babies, definitely on the minds of many, on the minds of myself as well. But in terms of the number here, bringing it out to the bigger picture, 40,000, if you look at that, it is really one of the most destructive military campaigns in recent history. 40,000 also means that 1 in about every 50 people in Gaza have been killed since October 7th. Put another way, it's been 314 days. In that time, an average of about 127 people have died. But I don't want to reduce this numbers. Again, bring this back that these are people, men, women, husbands, wives, babies, grandfathers, grandmothers, who all are not alive ever since October 7th. And an update also what's happening in the enclave today. Our CBS News producer Marwan Algul just told us that the Israeli military operation does continue. For example, outside Gaza City, at least 3 people were killed in a strike. The IDF is detonating houses in Khan Yunis and Rafah in the south. The Kerem Shalom border crossing is closed to humanitarian aid. And he actually says that in general, listen to this, it was a quiet night compared with the day before. Yesterday, at least 40 people were killed.
I mean, it really puts it in context, Raymond, when you're talking about a quiet night and in the same breath talking about the destruction of people's homes, civilians. Ramy Inocencio for us, reporting from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Ramy, as always, for your reporting. Appreciate it. Okay, turning now to something different. Google says it has evidence that foreign hackers are once again targeting the presidential campaigns. The company claims an Iran-backed group is behind the latest hack targeting both sides. CBS's Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga joins me now with the details. So, Nicole, tell me what you're learning about this alleged Iranian-linked group and who exactly are they targeting?
Yeah, Vlad, we've seen this movie before. For the third presidential election cycle in a row, campaigns confronting foreign hacking operations. But this time, we're actually not talking about Russia. Leading the charge is an intelligence unit of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're known as APT-42. And Google researchers, they put out a report revealing a months-long phishing attack that is using a tactic known as spear phishing to go after high-profile individuals linked to both the Republican and Democratic campaigns, tracking high-profile targets into giving away sensitive information, using malicious links. And in this case, those Iranian state-backed cyber criminals have gone after the personal email accounts of roughly a dozen people, including members of the Biden-Harris administration. Now, Google saying in this report that APT-42's attacks are ongoing, with Iranian hackers successfully breaking into the Gmail account of at least one high-profile political consultant. The Google report also detailing APT-42's increasing cyber attacks on Israeli targets, including government officials, former senior Israeli military officials, diplomats. In the past 6 months, Google says 60% of this group's known geographic targeting centered on Israel and the United States.
So Nicole, you mentioned the alleged hacking of the Trump campaign, the Harris campaign, and I'm guessing those are not the only instances of Iranian-backed hacking this election cycle. And how, if I'm guessing, Iran has not responded.
Yeah, so all of these revelations, I should say, from Google, they actually come on the heels of another security assessment, this one from Microsoft last week, indicating that a high-ranking campaign official was also the target of a similar Iranian-backed attack. And the campaigns have addressed this. The Trump campaign said in a statement last weekend it was the victim of what's called a hack and leak operation powered by Iran. The Harris campaign told CBS News that it too had been targeted by a foreign actor influence operation, but was not aware of any breaches to its system. We know that the FBI confirmed Monday it's actively investigating the matter. And a spokesperson for Google's team told CBS News the company has passed along information to federal law enforcement. You mentioned Iran. Iran has categorically denied any and all involvement here in a new statement. Vlad?
All right, Nicole, thank you very much for your reporting. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, take a look at this feed coming into our CBS News broadcast center right now. It is a feed of Republican VP nominee J.D. Vance, who will be stepping up to that podium in just a short time. He's at a campaign event in, where does that say in the prompter? New Kensington is the word. New Kensington. We're going to keep an eye out on that and monitor that podium for any news as soon as he starts speaking. If he's saying something that's of interest, we'll bring it to you live right here on CBS News 24/7. Stick around. Well, last night, former President Donald Trump made a campaign stop in Asheville, North Carolina, where he outlined his economic plan. The former president used Tic Tacs. Yeah, like, you know, the candies, Tic Tacs, to demonstrate inflation under the Biden administration. And then he veered off to attack President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris while talking about Tic Tacs. So you're also looking here at a feed of where his running mate, J.D. Vance, will give remarks in New Kensington, Pennsylvania. We're going to monitor the event. There's some other speakers there at the podium. But once the vice presidential candidate takes to the podium, if he's saying something of interest, we'll bring it to you live right here. Let's get straight to CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small, who's following this campaign and joins me now. So Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, has now agreed to a vice presidential debate on CBS with Governor Tim Walz. He's also agreed to a second debate on September 18th on CNN. What are you hearing from the campaign about those?
Well, the idea here, Vlad, is to make sure that Walz and Harris gets out in front of the media. In their mind, they believe that if they speak more, they would disenchant voters as they feel the Harris-Walz campaign is experiencing a honeymoon phase. That's also part of the reason why we're seeing vice presidential pick J.D. Vance utilize his campaign rallies like the one today as also press conferences. He's holding media avails and gaggles often because he's trying to draw the contrast between the Harris campaign for not necessarily being open to media, although it is still a bit early in her bid for president.
Tori, there was also some audio recording released yesterday of J.D. Vance, again, getting himself in trouble with women and women voters and also men, I guess, where he said something that seemed really off kilter to a lot of people when he talked about women who are postmenopausal. What are you hearing from the campaign about that?
All the amphibs are broken.
Well, the campaign is dismissing all of this as, political opposition research against J.D. Vance. They're saying that it's not necessarily in context. What I'm hearing, though, is that J.D. Vance, the team around J.D. Vance is looking to stick to the message here, which is, again, they want to draw this contrast between the Harris campaign and the Trump campaign in terms of how often they're speaking in front of the media. But we do see, and today will probably be another example of that, the opportunity to ask Vance about this directly. But again, it's likely that he'll say that these comments were being taken out of, blown out of proportion.
Yeah, well, Tori, if you do get him in front of your camera and in front of your microphone, we'll bring it to you live right here on CBS News 24/7 because I want to hear the answer. Tori, traveling with the campaign, we appreciate you, brother. Thank you. All right, President Biden and Vice President Harris will appear together in Maryland later today, promoting a historic deal to cut prescription drug prices. It is not a campaign event, but it is the first time they are making a joint appearance since Vice President Harris became the nominee. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joins me now for more on this. So, Nancy, what details do we know about this proposed plan and this joint appearance?
Well, what we know, Vlad, is that if this plan goes according to the terms that have been laid out, it will mean a significant savings, not only for U.S. taxpayers, but also for Medicare recipients. Starting in 2026, Medicare will finally have the ability to negotiate its first 10 drugs. Remember that while private insurance companies have had the ability to negotiate with drug companies to lower prices for decades, Medicare by law could not do that. It had to pay the full price. Now, the first 10 drugs have been revealed, and also the price reductions in those 10 drugs. And these are drugs that people have heard of: Eliquis, Xarelto, Jardiance. These are drugs to tackle cancer and blood pressure, high blood pressure, things like that. And we are told that by the administration that that the reduction is quite significant. We're talking about anywhere between 35 and 90% reduction in the cost of these drugs. And it goes into effect in 2026, but they're saying that if it had been in effect earlier, if it had been in effect in 2023, Medicare would have saved $6 billion. And beneficiaries would have saved about $1.5 billion in out-of-pocket drug costs. So this will be a fairly significant savings when it goes into effect.
And Nancy, we sort of outlined it in the introduction that this is the first joint appearance between Vice President Harris along with President Biden since he dropped out from the race. There's been some reporting out there about the tension that exists, such as it is, between President Biden and others in the Democratic leadership, including folks like Nancy Pelosi and former President Barack Obama. But we know that, as you've reported, that the president is set to take to the DNC on Monday. He's going to be one of the first big keynote speakers. So what are they hoping to show the American people by this joint appearance and by the president, and I guess the legacy that they're going to sort of put a spotlight on the first day of the DNC?
Right. They're looking to show that this is a passing of the torch, that there is no bad blood between the president and the vice president. You are right that there is some lingering tension between President Biden and some Democratic leaders who he really felt were heavy-handed in forcing him out. But I have been told repeatedly by individuals both within the campaign and here at the White House that he does not bear any ill will towards Vice President Harris herself, that she was unfailingly loyal to the very end. Her entire team was completely buttoned up. They were not pushing for his ouster whatsoever. They were watching and waiting, but publicly they were entirely supportive. So that relationship appears to be as good as ever. And what you're watching is this delicate dance that the vice president is doing. On one hand, she wants to be able to take credit for the Biden-Harris legacy. She's been here at the White House for nearly 4 years, working side by side with the president, even as she looks to establish her own identity, her own platform, her own agenda. So today, she's going to be standing there with President Biden, touting this big prescription drug plan that happened on her watch. She actually cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate to make it happen. I'm sure you'll hear about that. But then tomorrow, she's going to be out on her own on the campaign trail, unveiling her own plan to combat price gouging when it comes to groceries. So you will see this split screen, I think, between now and Election Day, standing with President Biden, but also looking to establish her own identity going forward.
Speaking of the campaign trail, Nancy, it's something interesting. We were all talking about it on CBS Mornings earlier today, how this campaign that Vice President Harris is running is in stark contrast to her attempt at running for the presidency back in 2019. How the campaign, even as you say, that she was a loyal soldier to the very end with President Biden, but the minute that he chose to step down, this campaign roared into activity. I mean, are those of you in the press corps sort of astounded by how quickly she got going and got on her feet and raised all that money? I mean, just give me your sense of that.
Yes, especially because, frankly, there were some bumps in the road with her campaign back in 2020. She struggled to size up her campaign. There were some leadership challenges, some management challenges there. Obviously, in this case, she is inheriting the Biden campaign apparatus, but it really changed very rapidly to focus on her, to create a sort of a more youthful identity. That's not easy, and they did it quickly. We've seen some growing pains out of the campaign trail. Suddenly, she's attracting thousands and thousands of people to these events. They're much larger than the campaign was used to in the Biden days. And so, those are difficult events to pull off, particularly without a lot of pre-planning. And so they are sort of building this airplane in the air, trying to get used to the much larger interest that people have in these events going forward.
Love it. Very interesting. Great reporting as always, Nancy. Love having you on. Thank you.
Thanks, Vlad.
Okay, it's been over 2 months since Boeing Starliner launched 2 NASA astronauts to the International Space Station for what was supposed to be, folks, an 8-day mission. Only 8 days. We've got an update on their plans to get the astronauts home, and it's not happening potentially until next year. Stick around. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following. A Russian court has sentenced a dual U.S. Russian citizen to 12 years in prison for treason. Ballerina Ksenia Karolina was charged with donating about $50 to a charity benefiting Ukraine. She was arrested while on a family visit earlier this year. Karolina was not part of the recent prisoner swap involving Russia, the U.S., and several other countries. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy has reportedly made his choice to replace outgoing Senator Bob Menendez. CBS sources say his former chief of staff, George Helmy, will take over the seat until the November election. Murphy is expected to appoint whoever wins to the seat early. Menendez was convicted on federal corruption and bribery charges and will officially resign next week. And it's still up in the air when the Boeing Starliner astronauts at the International Space Station will come back. NASA is expected to make a decision next week if they will wait for SpaceX to fly them home. The Boeing spacecraft experienced technical issues, including hydrogen leaks. At this point, it's likely what was supposed to be an 8-day mission could stretch into 2025. All right, turning back now to our top story. You're looking at the flooding Hurricane Ernesto left behind in Puerto Rico. Much of the island is without power after strong winds knocked down power lines. The storm is strengthening as it heads towards Bermuda, where preparations are underway. CBS News national correspondent Manuel Bojorquez is in Puerto Rico and joins me now to discuss. Manny, what's the effort like to restore power to the island? Where does that stand now?
Well, Vlad, I would say it is improving, but only slightly. To paint the picture for you, yesterday when Ernesto hit, half the island lost power. This morning, we woke up to see that about 480,000 customers had lost power. That's still about a third of the customers on the island. And you got to remember that these are people who in these hot summer times rely on air conditioning, but also sometimes life-saving equipment for their elderly parents, many of them having to run it right now on generators. And they're wondering, given the history of the situation with the power grid here being weak and needing improvement, whether the power restoration might be a matter of hours or, God forbid, many of them would say days.
All right, Manny Bojorquez for us live from Puerto Rico. Manny, thank you very much. Let us bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with another look at the national forecast. Tammy.
Well, you know what, Vlad? As that storm passed Puerto Rico, it was basically a tropical storm. Now it is a hurricane, and it is an intensifying hurricane. Out here in the Atlantic, it is headed northward. You can see it right here on the globe, taking up a lot of real estate in the Atlantic as it spins around. Let's go ahead and show you what's going on and explain how a storm system here on the mainland is going to be the steering mechanism for it. Right here is where we have Ernesto, again, Category 1 storm, expected to become a Category 2 later today, and then possibly a Category 3. It'll be a close call if it's a Category 3 passing tiny Bermuda. I put an arrow so that you could see right where it is. Right now, it is about 600 miles south-southwest of Bermuda. Let's take a look at what that track is going to do. Again, it will intensify, and then likely it'll begin to weaken. Maybe has an eye wall replacement, encounters a little more sheer and cooler water. But Bermuda, if it stays right here, if this is where the track is on the dirty side of this thing, that means the highest winds, the highest surge, and the heaviest rain. Now, that'll go on off into the Atlantic, should not bother the U.S. mainland other than rough surf and rip currents, dangerous conditions if you're going to be going to the beaches this weekend. And we're going to deal with rain. Right now, we have a severe risk and heavy rain in the heartland. This is including parts of Iowa and Illinois, maybe even just a little bit of Wisconsin and all of Missouri. Tomorrow, that risk shifts over the Ohio Valley. You can see it in the green. That's the severe risk for tomorrow. By the time that we get into Saturday, that's about the time that Ernesto is passing Bermuda. That risk is now near the East Coast. Here's what's going to happen. Here is Ernesto. Here is that storm system on Friday. And as it moves eastward, it is actually going to steer Ernesto away from the U.S. mainland. We could have heavy rain and storms. Again, it will not be a pretty weekend if you're going to be going down the beach. And again, dangerous rip currents, high tides, not a good time to go in the water. If you're going to go to the beach, just toes in the sand and look at all of that out there. But Ernesto will be passing by Bermuda, it looks like, on Saturday and then into Sunday, beginning to pull away. But it is our storm system here on the mainland that will be guiding that. Back to you, Vlad.
All right, Tammy, thanks very much. CBS News has confirmed independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. recently reached out to the Harris campaign to talk about a potential cabinet position should the vice president win in November. And even though he's still on the ballot in multiple states, Kennedy had a similar conversation with former President Trump last month as well. So the big question this morning is why? Let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Allison Novello, who's joining me from Washington. So, yeah, a lot of people scratching their heads over this, Allison. On one hand, RFK Jr. is on the campaign trail talking to the American people about why he's the best choice to be president of the United States. And on the other, he's having these backdoor negotiations with both the Trump people and the Harris people about working for them in the cabinet and endorsing them. What's going on?
Hi, Vlad. Yes, multiple sources confirmed the Post reporting that RFK Jr. attempted to meet with Vice President Harris last week to discuss a cabinet position within her administration. But according to our sources, the Harris campaign expressed zero interest in meeting with a, quote, MAGA-funded fringe candidate. It's important to remember that he did try to meet with Donald Trump back in July during the RNC, or he did rather, to discuss a unity ticket. After the meeting, Kennedy took to X to try and dispel any rumors circulating about him potentially dropping out and throwing his weight behind Trump. But just yesterday, the Kennedy campaign told CBS News that the independent candidate would be open to meeting with both Harris and Trump to discuss a unity government. Though it appears Kennedy did not appreciate being rejected by the Harris campaign, because this morning, Kennedy posted on X and said that his uncle, RFK, and his father, JFK, wouldn't recognize the Democratic Party today. And he said he had no plans to endorse Harris. Vlad.
Okay, unity government. This isn't the United Kingdom. I guess the question, of course, is, Allison, is there a fear from either campaign, Trump or Harris, that he could siphon votes from either of them? And I guess whose side does it favor if he decides to stay in the race?
Well, Kennedy has repeatedly told reporters that he believes he is attracting voters from both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. After chatting with some of his supporters at his past campaign events prior to President Biden leaving the presidential race, many at the time said they wanted another option. Regardless of Harris stepping in as a Democratic nominee, allies of the Democratic Party are still working to try and keep Kennedy off state ballots. On Monday, a judge ruled to keep Kennedy off the ballot in New York, and currently Kennedy is facing legal challenges in other states such as Nevada, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Georgia, along with an objection filed in Illinois. So there are still ongoing efforts to slow his ballot access progress, Vlad.
Really interesting analysis. Excellent reporting, as always, Allison. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Vlad.
All right. A protest group in Chicago is expected to hold a press conference this morning as it fights the permit restrictions ahead of the Democratic National Convention. CBS News Chicago's Asa Rasaye explains what specifically this group wants.
With the DNC just days away now, one group says the city of Chicago is putting restrictions on their rights to protest. A coalition to march on the DNC says their permits to protest were approved, but the conditions of the permit won't allow them to put up any platforms or stages or use any sound equipment. The group says they've been blindsided by the city and they plan to file an emergency injunction and protest those conditions later in the city this afternoon. I'm reporting from the United Center. Asal Razai, CBS News.
All right, folks, we told you about this earlier. This is happening in New Kensington, Pennsylvania, where you see Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance is speaking. Let's listen.
Of the U.S. military, totally unforced error from Kamala Harris, and a total failure of leadership. We lost 13 brave service members that we didn't need to lose, and that was 3 years ago. So before we get started here, I just thought it would be appropriate for us to observe a moment of silence, think about those 13 young Americans who died, and think about their sacrifice. Amen. Thank you all, and thank you all for remembering them. You know, a lot of you know my story of service, and a lot of you don't. So just talk a little bit about my service in the United States Marine Corps, what it meant to me, and how it transformed me. Hoorah! We've got some Marines out there. Of course, we're the loudest and the most obnoxious. Of course, that's what we bring to the United States military. I've been traveling around with 4 soldiers and a sailor, and you know. That's like the beginning of a bad joke, I think. 4 soldiers, a sailor, and a Marine walk into VFW Post 92. Well, let me just say a few things about that service. So I was so fortunate to have the Marine Corps play a transformative role on my entire life. I was in a lot of ways a troubled kid, a directionless kid, and the Marine Corps really changed who I was. Now, the mamaw, the grandmother who raised me, was not excited about me joining the United States Marine Corps, enlisting right out of high school.
All right, you're listening to J.D. Vance speaking there at a campaign event in Pennsylvania. Obviously, Pennsylvania, a key battleground state in this year's elections. We'll continue to listen to Senator Vance, and if he says something of interest that warrants your attention, we'll bring it to you live right here on CBS News 24/7. Meanwhile, a third Ivy League president has stepped down after months of criticism over the handling of pro-Palestinian protests on her campus. What Columbia University's president had to say about her decision, that's coming up next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Taylor Swift resumes her Eras tour tonight in London after having to cancel her Vienna stops because of an alleged terror threat, but security is ramping up and the fan experience is going to look a little different than at past concerts. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayeb is joining me now from London. So, Imtiaz, is it going to be forever? Or are we going to go down in pain? Orange
Why did I
chain.
know you were going to do that, Vlad?
I mean, come on, baby. It's T Swift. I probably got the lyrics slightly wrong, but, you know, I've been doing that my whole life. So, look, I mean, tell me about the crowds and how police are preparing for tonight. I know you love being there.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a switch up from what I normally do. But listen, we're live from Wembley, which is not something I thought I'd ever really get to say. And look, there is a lot more security here. People are having their tickets checked more often than they might normally, their bags checked more often than they might normally. You can probably hear a police helicopter in the sky. But I have to say, Vlad, the vibes are immaculate. Look over my shoulder. You can see tons of Swifties making their way to Wembley Stadium for a night that many of them are telling us is going to be one that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. But one of the things we're not going to see tonight, one crucial thing we're not going to see tonight is tailgating. And if you don't know what tailgating is, well, then you're not one of the Swiftie initiated. Tailgating is tailgating, but Taylor Swift style, where you get to hang out in front of the stadium. You don't got a ticket, but you get to sing along to all of Taylor Swift's greatest hits. Sadly, that's not going to happen. We saw it in Munich, where 40,000 people turned up to tailgate, but alas, security means that they can't do that here in London. But we are going to have 5 nights of Taylor Swift. Yes, security will be tight, but we are expecting at least 500,000 Swifties over that 5-night period. Vlad.
Brother, I know what tailgating is, okay? I was tailgating before you ever knew what tailgating was. I'm a tailgater. You're out there covering them wars. I'm out there with the Swifties, out there shaking it off. So what are the fans telling you, though? I know the tailgating is a big deal. They're not able to do it this time around, but I'm guessing they're still excited just to see her back on stage.
Yeah, look, like we've been saying, the vibes quite literally are immaculate. I have never seen more rhinestones, more glitter, more sequins than I have seen anywhere in my life. Like, it really is a really joyous mood. But I have been talking to people and saying, look, obviously we saw what happened in Vienna. Thankfully nothing happened, but concerts were canceled. How are you feeling now? And they're like, yeah, we were feeling a bit nervous. You know, we can't help but forget what happened in 2017 at the Manchester Arena at an Ariana Grande concert, you know, where a lot of people were killed in a bomb attack. It's still, people are saying, but we have faith in the security that have been put in place, and they just want to go and have the best night of their lives. And that's what a lot of people are planning to do tonight.
My producer, Becca, reminded me to tell you that those fans you're talking to, Imtiaz, they are fearless. Dude, next time I talk to you, I want you to do your hit. The next time you do a hit to talk to me about this in the aftermath of this concert, every line that you say in your intro and your tag should be a Taylor Swift lyric. That's the challenge.
You got a deal. Let's do it. I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go, Vlad. You think you're a Taylor Swiftie? I'm a Swiftie. Let's go.
Yes, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, let's talk about another shakeup at Columbia University. Of course, we're talking about this woman, the first woman to lead the university, Dr. Manoush Shafiq. She is stepping down. Shafiq faced heavy criticism, including from lawmakers, for how she handled the onslaught of Israel-Hamas war protests and anti-Semitism on campus. News of Shafiq's resignation is hardly surprising. Her handling of on-campus protests of the Israel-Hamas war this spring drew criticism from all sides. Last night, there were cheers that erupted from a group of pro-Palestinian demonstrators. Christina Fan has the details.
Good morning. News of Manoush Shafiq's resignation is hardly surprising. Her handling of the Israel-Hamas conflict here on campus drew widespread criticism from all sides. Pro-Palestinian demonstrators were angry that she took down their tent encampments and also authorized the arrest of students who were protesting here on campus, including those who stormed Hamilton Hall and barricaded themselves inside. Meanwhile, pro-Israeli activists are also angry that she did not crack down on those encampments early enough, allowing crowds to taunt students and also forcing the relocation of graduation ceremonies off the university's iconic lawn. Now, in a statement to the Columbia University, Shafiq wrote in part, "Over the summer, I have been able to reflect and have decided that my moving on at this point would best enable Colombia to traverse the challenges ahead. Shafiq is now the third Ivy League president to be forced to step down in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war. Reporting from Morningside Heights, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
All right, Christina, thanks so much. We are keeping a close eye on Hurricane Ernesto after it battered parts of Puerto Rico. We'll bring you the very latest as to where the storm is heading next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Disney's response to a grieving Long Island family's lawsuit has them vowing to fight on. CBS News New York's Carolyn Gussoff spoke with loved ones of the woman who suffered a fatal allergy attack after eating at a Disney Springs restaurant. The company asked a Florida court to throw out their suit because of the fine print on its Disney app.
This has been a profound loss for everyone.
She was basically ripped from our lives, and it's a tragedy.
Amy Tang Swan, an NYU Langone physician from Plainview, was vigilant, says her best friend, when she dined out. Her severe dairy and nut allergy always communicated.
It would not only be her that would make the staff aware, it would be whoever was with her, and when we would reiterate.
According to her husband's lawsuit in October at the Disney Springs restaurant, Raglan Road, the waiter guaranteed certain foods could be made allergen-free and confirmed several more times. She died soon after from anaphylaxis due to elevated levels of dairy and nuts in her system. Her cousin, attorney Peter Giattano, calls Disney's response shocking and absurd because years earlier, her husband Jeffrey Piccolo signed up for Disney Plus. He signed away his rights to sue.
She was stolen from him, and now, in effect, what Disney's doing is trying to steal his day in court. And that's a fundamental right that we all have.
Disney cites fine print in the agreement, which requires users to arbitrate all disputes with the company. It claims Piccolo also okayed a similar agreement more recently when he bought Epcot tickets online.
This would create just a horrific and horrible precedent. If you open up your phone and look down at all the services and things that you subscribe to.
But legal experts say we're signing consumer arbitration agreements all the time, and courts have ruled them enforceable. Arbitration must be fair and can be cheaper than a jury trial, but
you're also less likely to get those big punitive damages that you hear about. You're less likely to get the sympathy factor.
The case could have implications for anyone who's ever signed a user agreement.
I usually just scroll at the bottom and hit OK.
I just hit the circle where you accept, and then I just hit continue.
I think it's wrong. I mean, people aren't going to read all that fine print.
The family plans to fight Disney's dismissal motion at a hearing on October 2nd. Her best friend says they need their day in court to get answers.
So the process can be amended, and this will not happen to anyone else again. I lost my best friend, but I wouldn't want anyone else to lose theirs.
Carolyn Gussoff, CBS News, New York.
Okay, we're just looking at some breaking news here on my telephone that is just coming into the CBS newsroom right now. We are hearing that an arrest has been made in connection to Matthew Perry's death. That's according to numerous sources. You'll recall Matthew Perry was found dead last year. The cause of death was an accidental overdose of ketamine. So, folks, we're expecting to hear a little later this afternoon from the police. The police are going to be providing the press with some more details on the breaking news. If you're just joining us, arrests have been made in connection to Friends actor, Friends star Matthew Perry. The police expecting to talk about the details of their investigation later today, perhaps in our noon hour here at CBS News 24/7. So stick around. We'll have all the details for you a little bit later. Meanwhile, let's turn back to weather and bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Tammy Sousa with the final look at the national forecast. Tammy.
Well, let's go ahead and take another look at Ernesto. Still a Category 1 storm. It is now moving north of Puerto Rico. It is on its track toward Bermuda. Right now, this storm has winds that are approximately 85 miles an hour, but it is expected to strengthen into a Category 2 storm. Now, take a look. This is just one of the forecast tracks, but very quickly, this is going to be moving toward Bermuda, strengthening to a Category 2, possibly Category 3. Here we go on Saturday, passing the island, and this puts the island in the worst possible situation. It puts it just to the east of the hurricane, where you get the highest winds, the biggest rain, and the highest surge as well. By the time we get into Sunday, it has moved well off to the north. Vlad?
All right, Tammy, thank you very much. We'll talk to you tomorrow. An encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.